state. Oh, someone's going to have to, I don't know if it's coming from Nathan. I'm getting some backfeed there. Please mute if you could, everyone. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. So there's some changes that happened at the state in Oregon. Yeah, I'm still getting backfeed here.
Tyler, you should be able to mute him.
Yeah, let's see if we can. Okay, and I muted Jean, and let's see, that may have been, no, I'm still hearing it.
It's the 503-704-5793. It's the phone number. Whoever's number that is should mute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's me, and I am muted. I've got a sign right in front of me that says you are muted.
Not on your telephone.
Yeah, on your cell phone.
Mute your telephone as well.
Now that I've never done before, but I'll just turn the volume off.
Okay, we'll try that. Scott, that seems to work. Thank you very much, sir. So anyway, so there's Oregon Public Meeting Law. It's changed as we've gone to this new world order of having our Zoom team meetings, and that we need to record all of our meetings. So this is my blanket, hey, we are going to be recording this meeting and giving you the heads up. And so Kel has pressed the record button. Any questions on recording tonight's meeting? Excellent. Back to you, Jen. Thank you.
Oh, that was pretty easy. Visitor comment period. Do we have any visitors? I don't think so. No. Okay, no visitors. So I guess we're on to the downtown equity strategy presentation with Cadence and Rachel.
All right, thank you, Jen. So I know a few of you, but some of you are new faces, and so I'll just give a little brief introduction. I am Cadence Petros. I'm the Development Division Manager at the City of Beaverton, and with me is Rachel Thieme. She's actually in the Economic Development Division, and together we are the project team for the Downtown Equity Strategy. And we wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk to you about this new effort. Some of you have been talking about gentrification, the dangers of displacement for a long, long time, and really encouraging us to get on with it already. And so this is us beginning to tell you we're finally getting on with it and doing some really interesting and hard work. And we're here today at the ground floor because we are hoping that you all will be one of the key participant groups to help us through that work. We are really interested in your ongoing feedback if you have the desire and time to do that. And along with the Diversity Advisory Board and our Housing Technical Advisory Group, we're hoping that these three established groups can help us as we also do really robust community engagement out in the city. So I just want to turn it over to Rachel now to walk you through some slides to talk about what we think this effort is going to look like. And before she begins, I'd like to just offer that we want this to be a very heavily community involved endeavor. And so what we're going to talk about is what we as a city group think are the key elements of a downtown equity strategy. And we also recognize and are encouraging that we want your input and the input of community members. And so where we end up in 12 months may be very different from what we're going to talk about with you today, because we think there's going to be some twists and turns. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel and let her walk you through what we think we're doing starting now.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Thieme. I work in the Economic Development Group and been at the City of Beaverton for about 3 years and change. And this is actually my first time at URAC, so it's great to be here. Like Cadence mentioned, I have some slides, and I think there's about 5 or 6, and then some discussion questions specifically for the group. So we'd really love your feedback. This is our first presentation outside of staff, and we're just really eager to get your feedback and check us and make sure we're on the right track, and this is what you'd like to see in the downtown. Let's see. Oops. Okay, so we see a really big opportunity here with the expected Bureau investments that are about to change the way that that downtown is going to look and feel through big investments in infrastructure and development. And as Cadence said, we hear you, and we believe that there is a strategy based around racial equity to guide these investments, as well as other city initiatives that take place in the downtown, having to do with redevelopment, with infrastructure, to really ensure that Beaverton becomes an inclusive place for racially diverse communities, that we prevent and mitigate displacement, and that we actively are creating an inclusive downtown. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the top part of this here. This is kind of our guiding statement, and would love your feedback on this as we go through the discussion here. But what the Downtown Equity Strategy is a framework for spending public resources in a manner that recognizes that downtown belongs to all Beaverton residents, and as such should develop in a way that's interesting, inviting, and accessible to people of all backgrounds, centering Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and in doing so, prevent, minimize, and mitigate involuntary residential and business displacement. Our guiding light is that this is an action-oriented strategy. This is not a plan to sit on a shelf. We want to really make sure that that this is institutionalized and really utilized throughout all of our practices in the downtown area. This is what we have in mind for our project geography. Oops, excuse me. So it's essentially the Urban Renewal District, which I know you're all very familiar with, which is kind of this yellow-orange boundary here, as well as the Allen Blvd district area that was described in the Allen Blvd plan that was released last year, as well as this area between, just south of Old Town and to Allen Blvd. And the reason for including this is that we really wanted to encompass the areas that would be benefiting from these projects, but also potentially be on the receiving end for neighborhood change, for potential displacement, and for the impacts of development that happened in the downtown area. So our 3 kind of pillars or prongs to this strategy is first, strategies and tools that, that focus around displacement prevention and mitigation. So, what is our relocation policy? What are some of the actual things that we can do as a city to prevent displacement in this area? The second is kind of a proactive piece, an inclusive downtown policy strategies and tools. So this would inform something like our restaurant strategy, and what are the types of amenities that we want to see downtown? How are these reflective of communities of color in Beaverton and Washington County? And how do we incent them in our downtown and retain what exists? And then the third is a decision-making process. So this is really, how do we institutionalize community engagement and the use of a racial equity lens in any downtown redevelopment and infrastructure project? And maybe this looks like looking at our process for approvals before projects go before decision makers and advisory bodies. How do we ensure that that we have a really great community engagement process every time that's standardized, so that we're not reinventing the wheel each time a new project comes online, or there's a new staff, or there's a different group? How do we really ensure that we have a consistent process, and that we are taking each proposal through a racial equity analysis and ensuring that we are creating the most good with these projects. So as Cadence mentioned, community engagement is critical to the success of this. We want this to be, at the very least, a community informed process. We intend for it to be very collaborative. And at first, at least, we, as you mentioned, want to involve you guys, URAC, as well as DAB and HTAG, because these are the existing community advisory bodies that are working in the downtown area and already working with the city. We know that there's going to be a lot more than that, and we are planning on working with a consultant this year to help direct these efforts as well. But we're really thinking, how do we make sure that this is sustained, but also when there are maybe some faster decisions that need to be made, how do we call in the community to help us make some of these other decisions as they come up. And then these are some discussion points that we have, and I think this is how Cadence and I would like to spend the bulk of this, is some real questions for you to really help us shape what this is going to look like. And so the first one is, and maybe I'll just read through all of them and then we can discuss from there. What would be evidence of an inclusive downtown? I'd love to hear your perspective, what it would look like if we're successful. Second, love to know, is the project scope, those 3 prongs, are those the right way to approach this project? Is there something that we're missing? And then, is the project geography correct? So that was the urban renewal area with, south of 5th to Allen Blvd. And then we'd love to know how URAC would like to be engaged over time. So let's see, I will leave this up, but try to see you all. Is there anyone that has some initial feedback to some of these points?
This is Anne.
Hi.
Hi, a really quick answer to the first question, and it's an oversimplified answer, but I would think that an inclusive downtown would be diverse, would reflect the diversity of Oregon, and it would be accessible, because you're talking about inclusivity around how able the people are. You're also talking, when you talk about diversity, not just the ethnic background or anything else, but you're also talking age. You're also talking where people are originating from, what their belief systems are. So I would see an inclusive downtown as being reflective of the broad aspect of the citizenry.
Thank you, Anne. Anything else? Are there types of things? Yes, Alan.
Rachel, I have a quick question. If you look for evidence on an inclusive downtown, do we have any numbers to start with on what the diversity, what the population currently looks like, so that in the years to come, we can compare to where we were at?
Yeah, we have census data. We can look at a point and look at the radius around the specific area, looking at census tracts. I think we're also really curious of what are some of the indicators that that may be a little bit different too, in terms of that would really be specific to downtown, in terms of definitely looking at data like census data, but also the retention of potentially certain businesses, or looking at business ownership. We don't have great data on that, for example, right now. So there are some opportunities to better collect that data. That's something that staff is certainly aware of. Cadence, do you want to say any more on that?
I guess what the question that we're trying to answer is, what does winning look like? If we had $100 million to spend to build a fantastic downtown, what would that look like to be inviting to all of our community? And then to answer Alan's question, we have a lot of work to do on data collection. And so understanding what the right questions are is one of the first bits that we're going to have to do in this effort.
Rachel, this is Dan. I don't know if it's proper, but I was just curious. One of the data points, I'm just curious. There has been development in downtown Beaverton already. Has there been a lot of displacement or a lot of effect of this character that has happened?
That's a great question, Dan. We have had minor business displacement directly because of some of our redevelopment activities. We've done some relocation assistance for that to mitigate that displacement. But there hasn't been significant displacement that's directly caused by our activities. The fear really, I think, is more in indirect displacement due to changes in the tax base, the value of properties, what happens to existing businesses, existing renters, what are the things that we need to do to stabilize folks so that they can either rise with the tide or preserve some affordable rents in the commercial business area.
Any other evidence of winning? I like the way you phrased that.
I would say, having a group of small business owners, obviously representative of Beaverton's population, involved in the push and the effort, to put this together I would think would certainly be a huge help. And, I know you said you're working on the data to begin with to establish who all that would be, but yeah.
Great, thanks, Andy. Anybody else on that top question? All right.
I would say that the people visiting downtown, patronizing businesses are as diverse as our general population.
Yeah. Great.
One area too, I don't know how applicable this could be, but I do believe in sometimes benchmarking what we would consider as successful examples of, I guess you could say, winning the strategy. I can't think of any other cities outside of Beaverton off the cuff right now, but I wonder if there are, outside publications we can always refer to say, yeah, this city here has similar demographics, a similar population size, and these appear also to be successful indicators of implementing a successful plan. So again, I can't think of a particular city right now, but I wonder if there are any external data points we can always refer to say, yeah, you know what, these 3 activities are really successful, and it looks like also on the other hand, these 3 other activities are maybe not so successful. So I don't know if there's a benchmarking opportunity, but something we could probably consider just to look outside our own boundaries.
That's great feedback. Thanks, Nathan. We have an intern actually who just started today, and she's going to be working on this project, really helping us develop a body of research about what other cities are doing similar to Beaverton. We'd love to look at other examples and see what other folks are using for benchmarks, and see what we can apply to our community here. Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
So the next question is, any feedback on those 3 prongs on the project scope? Are these the right ones, do you feel like? Are we missing anything? Any concerns or comments on these?
This is Anne again. This isn't necessarily about the scope, but more about the process to determine and monitor the scope and to see if it's the direction we want to continue in. And that is that since inclusivity is the goal, I would hope that the people and businesses you involve in making the decisions are representative of the inclusivity that we are seeking.
Absolutely. That's super important to us, and will definitely be happening. Great. Any other feedback on the the scope here? Anything you'd like to see that you don't see up here? Hi, Paige.
Yeah, hi. The first prong says inclusive downtown, and I think if there was, I'm sure there is more depth to that statement, and there's more. But when I see that, I kind of think, well, what does that mean? Going back to like what you said before, what is evidence of that? Like maybe just refining that prong so that it's a more understandable, like what the goal is when you're saying an inclusive downtown. Because I don't know if that means like we're talking about like accessibility, like physical accessibility, if that means necessarily what that means, I guess.
So thank you for that, Paige. And one of our difficulties was we're going to Bureau board members in one-on-ones this week, and we're going to share with them our, I don't know, 6-page charter. They're supposed to be shorter, but we had a lot to say. We want to share that charter with you also, but you don't have a meeting in September. So what we thought we would do is have a more generalized conversation with you in August, send you the charter as soon as we kind of get the general blessing from the decision makers, ask for some specific feedback on that, and then come back to you all in October for a more fine-grained conversation about the actual words, because you're absolutely right. The details are truly what matters. And I guess what we mean by inclusive downtown, and we're actually shying away a little bit from inclusive, because what we really want to focus on is that this downtown belongs to all of our residents. And what we want to avoid is using sort of upper middle income white lens in how we develop the downtown. And so what are the strategies that we can employ to cultivate a downtown that attracts both communities of color as business owners and, as Jennifer said, as customers? And by doing that, ensure then that everybody feels like the downtown belongs to them. And so it would include ADA type accessibility, because we are talking about everybody. When we use the racial equity lens, I think what's important to remember is, although we're using that as a primary focus, it is not the only focus. So age, income, nationality, religion, all of these pieces are absolutely vital to having a downtown that we think is what Beaverton deserves. But by using that racial equity lens, which is essentially the lowest common denominator, making sure that the least among us are really seen and put in a central focus, and we can ensure that everybody is seen.
Hi,
Thank you very much for that detail.
Great point, Paige. I just wanted to follow up on that. Sometimes I found it's helpful to really describe the opposite of what you're looking for and even measure that. And that can really lead you into honing in on what does success look like. So if you can state clearly what you don't want and measure for that, to sort of, I don't want to be glib and say this is a solution in search of a problem, but let's be clear about where we are and what our goals are. And so I've just found sometimes going to the other side of the coin can get you to the side that you're actually trying to focus on.
That's a great point. Is there anything, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything kind of back up to that first point? What would you not want to see in our downtown? Does anything come to mind that right up top?
Not from my point of view. I mean, I've lived in this town off and on my entire life, and so I don't have a lot of experience around feeling like it's not inclusive, but that's just from my perspective.
Sure.
So,
yeah. I mean, I have things that come to mind when I think of like what you don't want to see and that it would drive people away. I think cost of like the dining options, other entertainment options, whatever it may be. So does everything in downtown have a cost associated? Are there free things that you could, like, obviously there already are, you've got parks, the wonderful parks around there and stuff like that. But I think having variety there, so you don't feel like downtown is only for those who can afford it, and that your dining options are not only, the sit down, full service, you're going to be really committing to dropping some money for that meal. But if there's like quicker options, just things like that that are more inclusive.
Maybe things that we're doing today, right, Paige? I mean, when I grew up
Yeah.
here, we were broke, so it was that we weren't the upper crust kind of folks. So it could be things that we're actually successful at right now, and maybe we just keep track of that and say, let's not lose that ability for people to grab sandwiches and sit in the park. Or
like, so when you say like, you were saying earlier, what do you not want to see? That's what I don't want to see happen, is that everything that moves in just is, expensive and becomes unobtainable for most people. And then it drives this like sense of exclusion. So yeah, I really like that concept of like, instead of like, it's hard to figure out what it is that you're looking for, to look for what you don't want, because that definitely spurred thought. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to take that into other parts of life too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate it too. Okay, great. Is there, just to keep this going, any feedback on the geography? Do we have the right geography? Andy,
I live in the midst of Bose, and I would say, I think the geography is right on from downtown all the way down to Allen Blvd. I would think so.
Great, thank you.
Rachel, could you please put the map back up?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, pretty good.
I'm going to put a couple people on spot. Inessa's not here. I'd ask her this question as well. But Paige, Andy, and Sara, I'm trying to think if anybody else lives, and Jennifer, live all in this area.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll kind of start with you on your thoughts. Sara, you live kind of west of Beaverton High School. Recently moved into that area. And you did that on purpose, as being closer to downtown and the things that you and your family enjoy. You have any thoughts on that?
I was going to say you cut out there right at the end, but yes, I have thoughts. I think the map and location looks great. Yeah, and I mean, I think like, again, our draw to the area was we wanted to raise our kids in a diverse area. And so like, definitely want to preserve the diversity of the area. That's like, I think what makes this place so wonderful. Oh, it looks like, oh, sorry, I'm looking. Like, it's just right. So why does it go in? Just curious. Like why not up to 6th Street or up to Farmington even? Yeah, that area.
I was curious about that too, why TV Highway and Farmington are sort of not all the way to Murray in this.
Yeah, I was reading Allen as 6th. I was way off.
So what we did is we essentially took the urban renewal area boundary and then just added that area south of the library to the Allen Blvd corridor. And we added that as an additional corridor area to include in the project area. So there are other areas that are not included, partly because the Allen Blvd area in our minds has such a high concentrations of both residents and businesses of color and also has an Allen Blvd corridor strategy and study that we wanted to focus on. But there is a question of, are there other kind of areas outside the urban renewal area that are as likely to be impacted by the urban renewal activities that we need to include? And that's why this is a main question for you all. And so any suggestions you have would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think like including that area, even if you just extended down 6th to Murray, like if you wanted to sort of stay with the urban growth boundary line on 6th. But like even on, for example, on Menlo and sort of right off of Farmington, they just sort of plow down a small house and there's a builder sign like ready to put up sort of a new construction house. And it's like you have pretty good walkability to Old Town in that area from those houses, sort of Erickson, and lots of multifamily. So that would be the one area just to maybe think about. Thank you, Tyler. I was definitely reading the map wrong.
And so would you just make Murray Boulevard all the way up to the urban renewal area boundary, that whole square?
Yes. Because that area has like very sort of close walkability to the Old Town. And, you know, I see like, and again, I sort of like, we live right there and I see the houses in the area and I see sort of what they're going for versus what they used to go for. And like I said, small houses being plowed down to put in bigger new construction houses. So I think it's definitely, and there's a lot of multifamily that I could see sort of turning over in a not favorable way for what we want.
Right. So then I think the other area that we'd like you to concentrate on and let us have some feedback in is the area north of Center Street.
Yeah, and I wanted, yeah, sorry, Cadence, I wanted to call on Rebecca since she lived up in that area for a period of time and she may have some thoughts on that.
Getting time to mute. I mean, I think it's important to have that area. It's really very walkable, right? So I lived back up, it's outside of your orange zone up in, well, in that right corner that was there, but it's incredibly walkable. And you have, what I really liked about it was that you had, like, I could walk, yeah, so where the green circle is. So I could walk from these, you know, huge housing, like a lot of really nice homes and everything in this area. And I could walk down to the transit center and I could walk down to like Orange Theory and Jim and Patty's that were down there. I used to do that in the mornings. And so it, you know, and there's a bunch of apartments that are there too. And you could have all the people from the apartments walking down there as well. And so I think it was a really good example of what you can have when you've got a lot of walkability paths and having people from all different walks of life and socioeconomic statuses being able to come in. So
do you think then that given our urban renewal activities, particularly at Beaverton Central now, and then potentially at the transit center in future years, if we're successful having anything happen there, do you think that that neighborhood north of Center would be at risk for displacement or other development pressures?
The housing areas, no. Those homes are there. They're having an HOA election. My mom still lives up there, and no, they're not going to get displaced. Would the apartment complexes? Yes. Well, they're really well entrenched. I mean, it would have to take a lot of money I could see them turning them into like people trying to come in and change them out into condos. I've seen that happen a few times, but they're it's going to sound terrible, but they're a little bit higher end of apartments anyway. They're more expensive than other apartments around town. So
along Center, Rebecca?
There's a bunch, yeah. So there's some along Center Street. I mean, there's at least 4 that I'm thinking of just in that area. Yeah, there's all around there. There's about 4 different apartment complexes.
Yeah,
and I think there's even more if you keep going back towards that Magnet High School. You know, that's back there.
Anything south of Center would be at risk. Like
Probably.
that would be the kind of the just down would be.
But that's not a lot of housing. I mean, that's a lot of
there's a trail.
No, not even apartments. I mean, because I'm thinking of it, I'd come through the THPRD path, and then I'd be on Center Street, and then I'd walk down, and all of a sudden I'm in a strip mall. So, and then, you know, I'm right on BH Highway, and then, so there's Fred Meyer. So it's like, there's not a lot of displacement to be had. at least in that particular area. But I think the price of the apartments will probably keep going up.
Yeah, I think the apartments on the south side of Center, or yeah, south side of Center, is that right? Near the transit center, I think a lot of those are fairly affordable. I think the ones on the north side, up close to the THPRD park, are, yeah, more market rate. I think personally, I think the housing north of Center, as you get closer to Cedar Hills Boulevard, is already gentrifying. And so, yeah, I think what's there is definitely at risk.
Such a cutesy area. It's those little bungalows. Those
Yeah.
little houses.
They just redid the outside of those. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice, just a nice starter home. Super cute neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, yeah, that's on the other side of Center Street Park. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like there's some kind of mixed feedback about going north of Center a little bit more. But you know, it's something that we can continue to look at.
So does it matter that that's Washington County and not City of Beaverton?
Probably.
Always. That part of it is City of Beaverton. So,
Right.
but it's only the housing complex, and one of those houses on sale for like $600,000. We just went and looked at it. So, like, just to see what the neighborhood has come to in 12 years compared to what it was when my mom moved in. So, I don't know that you have to take them into account. I don't think anybody's going anywhere in those homes, quite frankly.
So one of the things we can do is have that be an area of more study, so that we can understand and then also open up lines of communication with Washington County, just so that we have our kind of taking the temperature of that neighborhood too.
Absolutely. So unless there's no more feedback on the geography, I think our last question was how would this group like to be involved? Would you like us to come on a regular basis and give updates and you know, check in on where we're at and get feedback on different aspects of the project? Is that overkill? Something in between?
I'll chime in here. I think you know, kind of given the gravity and the importance of what we're discussing, I would like to see you know, some type of regular update, if at all possible, maybe quarterly or monthly, whatever your team and this body thinks is appropriate. But yeah, I would love to see you know, some type of update periodically, and also maybe a copy of these presentation slides, or if there's any other public meetings around this topic, would be really helpful, just so we can get plugged in and be part of those conversations as well. But yeah, I think more information is always a great thing, and getting everyone's input to something so important, I think, would be really fantastic. So I'm all on board if you guys have the bandwidth and the resources to do that. I'm for sure all in.
Yeah, that's great. We're happy to do that. And just so you know, we're going to be going to the Diversity Advisory Board next week, and also to HTAG at the end of the month, and kind of ask them similar questions and try to get some more input as we look to continue to grow this. So, any other feedback on how the group would like to be involved? All right.
Rachel, before you depart and say your goodbyes, we do have a visitor in the audience, and I think he may have a question. So I would like to go to our visitor and see if he does have a question.
Hello. My name is Ashley. I work at Intel, and I'm also a third-year grad student at Multnomah University, pursuing my MDiv. And actually, I'm in right now managing organizational and diversity class at right there now. And so this was right along with it, which was fortuitous as much of what y'all are doing a wonderful job. There was somebody who said something about including one of those groups when making plans, and I think that is a very excellent idea, because some things that we are some nationalities do things different, and you want to have that input to make sure that what you're doing is understood fully and not really trying to be a hindrance or a slight or anything. So you probably would need somebody who would talk to like interject or something like, hey, watch how you proceed with that plan or something. So that's the only thing I say. Y'all doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, Ashley. I couldn't agree with you more. We have this constant struggle of wanting to come with ideas so that we're not just silent when we come talk to folks, but we also don't want to tell people what they need and want. And so it's how do we create opportunities for folks to talk to us and tell us what they want, tell us what they need, and then communicate that to our decision makers in a way that they can also hear. And that will be our kind of ongoing learning process together with you all, with the public at large, and definitely with targeted outreach to various communities of color and other folks.
How often do y'all meet?
This particular body meets usually every month. It's the first Monday of every month, and it's an advisory committee to our urban renewal board. So welcome tonight. Thank you for coming.
It's funny, and this is how Black and brown people, a lot of decisions are being made for them that they don't know that they can be included in. And so this is one of the things that I seen Hillsborough and Beaverton grow substantially. Intel has brought in like a lot of diversity, and it hasn't looked like it was before. It's just like growing. And I mean, I live over by Farmington and what is it, 198th, I think, and it is, just looks different, and different projects is going on. So it is interesting that Blacks or people don't feel like they could intercede or interject in something like this, and I think that needs to be voiced some kind of way, like, hey, we are trying to be inclusive, but if you don't come or you don't voice your reason or say something, it's gonna seem like we weren't trying to include anyone, but y'all are.
Well, and it's also on us to find people where they're at. It's not super effective to say, oh, hey, come talk to us on our website if nobody has ever once Googled the City of Beaverton website. And so that's on us, and we're trying to do a better job to make sure that we do active outreach. And so actually on that, Ashley, I'm gonna put into the chat my contact information. And so if you want to have more information about our progress on the downtown equity strategy, or you want to let anybody else know about the work that we're doing, you can just copy down my contact information and call or email kind of anytime, and we'd be happy to put you on you could be person number 1 on our mailing list, and we can go from there.
All right. I just want y'all to know I am a minister as well. I'm studying to get my MDiv at Multnomah University, and this is one of my class assignments. So please forgive me. I know y'all was like, who is this dude? Where he come from? Because I would have been the same thing. Like, so that's me in a nutshell.
All right, thank you. I actually thought you were a URAC member, so I didn't know you were a visitor.
Okay. All right.
Well, I was chatting privately with Ashley, and he was so gracious and respectful and kind to kind of figure out the format. So Tyler, thank you for opening up the question to him, even after we had our public questions at the beginning.
Great. And Ashley, we, you know, as I said, we'd love your feedback and collaboration as we really try to make downtown Beaverton the center for this community, for this diverse community that is growing and changing. And you know, what are some new ways that we can do that? We're not sure yet, and we want to make sure that we're as this area changes, that it's changing for the good for everyone in this community. So thank you for being here. This is my first meeting too, by the way. So.
So yeah, thank you, Ashley. Thank you. And final thoughts for Rachel and Cadence. I'm seeing none, but I want to thank Cadence and Rachel for coming tonight. I know we've been trying to figure out what comes first, of being able to talk to the Bureau Board or talk to the Advisory Committee. And really appreciate you thinking about how to lay today out and be able to, you know, give our Advisory Committee a chance to kind of be the first ones, because this has been really important.
All right, thanks, Tyler.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So we have another presentation, Tyler. The downtown design.
Yeah,
downtown
exactly.
loop design.
So as we welcome our visitors, I would like to take a moment to introduce them. And we've got three new folks. Jean Senechal Biggs, and she's the Transportation Planning Manager. Jean has been with the city for a year and a half, maybe, ish.
Year and a couple months.
Yeah, okay. And so she is part of Community Development Department and is taking on the role, many different hats in our transportation group. And so she has recently hired Dan Turk from Washington, and Dan is going to be orchestrating this project, but Jean was kind enough not to put him on the spot tonight. So she did put Sara King on the spot, as she has been helping Jean put together the scope of work for this the scope of work for the consultant team for the downtown loop. Sara is in our development division as a senior development project manager. She's got a lot of experience at PDC and Portland Public Schools. So this is kind of one of those first things out of the box. When Sara came on board, we hit COVID. I saw her for like a day and a half in the office, and then we split up. And she's been kind of catching a little bit of everyone where their needs are in CDD since COVID happened. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sara and Jean. And as just like the downtown equity strategy is a very urban renewal project that's been on top of our list of things that we need to be doing and working on. The downtown loop is going to be a construction project that will be really identifying a piece of streetscape, mobility, access of folks between two different parts of our community, and thinking about kind of a holistically portions of our community. So it's a public infrastructure project that will be supported by Bureau. So thank you, Jean, Sara, and Dan for coming tonight. I'm going to be quiet now.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Tyler. So Sara and I have a slideshow to share with you all. So I'm going to pull it up on screen. And we're excited to be here with you guys. Let's see. Hold on a sec. It's big. There. Is it big?
Big.
Okay. All right. Great. So hello, as Tyler said, we're here to talk to you about the loop. This is a project that came to us. I'll explain some of the history, but you may have heard about this project with the Downtown Design Project. I'm going to look at Tyler and say, have Steve and Brian been here? Yes. Okay. So you'll recognize some of our presentation. But we thought we'd just give you, I'm going to go through the project background, and then I'll hand it over to Sara, who's going to talk with you about the scope of this project, our budget and schedule, and then we'll have some time there to talk with you all about your role as the URAC and the community engagement we'll be doing. Okay, Tyler introduced us. So I feel like you've already met us, but for all of us, it's our first time here, and it will not be our last time here. We will be coming back again multiple times throughout the project to share our progress with you and get your input. So you all know downtown Beaverton well. I like this shot just because it gives a good sense of the areas that we're really looking at when we talk about the loop, which is Old Town and Beaverton Central, and how we connect these two parts of our downtown. As you know, we've got Canyon Road and Farmington and the railroad tracks really as a kind of a divider and a barrier in our downtown. And what we want to do is kind of really see these two areas connected, have like an integrated streetscape that helps create that identifier for what our downtown is, but also make some improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians, increase safety on Hall and Watson, and really kind of help spur along the activity that we're seeing in downtown. If you go back in time and you look at things like the vision plan, right, that really identifies downtown as a top community priority. Back in 2016, Beaverton and ULI Northwest collaborated on a project where planning and real estate and economic development experts came and visited downtown and worked with us. And one of the concepts that came out of that was what we now call the loop. And then that idea was carried forward into the Downtown Design Project. We're nearing the end of that process. Steve and Brian have been busy working on this development code update, but early on you would have seen some of the concept work that came out of how do we, what's the framework for downtown? How do we organize our downtown? What are the street classifications? How might we have some hierarchy amongst our streets? And what kind of public spaces do we want to create? This is just to remind you about kind of what the intent of the Downtown Design Project. Again, sort of these are the pieces, and the loop is one of these pieces that's coming out of the action items. So this is what we call the urban design framework, where we're looking at the priority of the streets, I should say hierarchy of the streets. And this right here, here's Watson, here's 4th, here's Hall, and then here's where Crescent Street is. So here's the Round, and here's the Transit Center, here's the library and City Park. So this is what we call the loop, this pair of streets. As the urban design framework really talks about sort of gateways, where are the key entrances onto the loop, where are the major connecting cross streets, how circulation happened in our downtown. This is really an opportunity for us to kind of rethink our downtown streets as we look forward into planning in downtown. So what's the loop? The loop is really meant to be this central unifying feature in downtown. I mentioned there's a real strong need to prioritize bicycle and pedestrian access. There are segments of Hall and Watson where the sidewalks just, there aren't any sidewalks that exist. Sometimes the bike lane is there and then the bike lane drops. We really want to make this be a completely integrated corridor for people to be able to access downtown, not just by car, but on foot and bike and transit. So if you were following the Downtown Design Project at all, you may have seen some work that they did to look at reconfiguring the streets. What might some of these design concepts be? They put these together and they shared them with the public at an open house, really more to engage with folks, to get them excited about how might these streets look different, and get some initial input and feedback. So here is Watson between Farmington and First, where we've got parking on both sides, a bike lane and 2 travel lanes and sidewalks. And one concept that they shared with the public was, what if we took out a lane of parking, and how might we use that for a bike lane and potentially widening the sidewalks to make them more usable for the adjacent businesses. So there's sort of one concept. Another was, what if we took out both lanes of parking and used that to create wider sidewalks and a shared bicycle and pedestrian space and have more room for trees? So again, these were just concepts to really just kind of get feedback and reactions from people. The work that we'll be doing through our process, Sarah's going to describe to you. We're going to take a step back from this before we move forward with any more design work. So, you know, we need to talk about vision and goals and priorities. That's where we need to start with first for these streets. So I'm going to stop there before I hand it over to Sara, and just see if you have any questions. And Tyler, call on people because I can't see everyone all at once, maybe. Anybody? Or just unmute yourself.
Why are you stepping back from those lovely street plans that I like so much?
Because now that we're focused in on the corridor, we need to do some, gather some data, really understand what are the existing conditions of the corridor. And we'll be doing that work with a consultant team that's going to bring in some experts, both on the urban design side, but also on the traffic and transportation and civil infrastructure improvement side. And then we also, now that this is a standalone project, we also want to reach out to the community and have a more focused conversation about these two streets and talk about and ask folks what should be our priorities for these streets, what's the vision, and then be able to move into a design phase. So those are great concepts. I think too, when you look at Hall and Watson, there's changing conditions depending on where you are. So imagine that there may very likely be, when we're done with this project, that cross-section may change depending on where you are on the street. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm also wondering,
okay,
maybe you're the wrong person to ask, but what about the area that is closed off right now in downtown Beaverton, which is just outdoor seating for food right there? Yeah. Is that going to stay, or are people talking about that staying as a permanent? Maybe that's not you guys, but
it might be. If Sara or Tyler want to take that.
Go ahead, Sara.
Sure, I'll say a quick bit about it. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here and to meet you all. And I want to apologize for half my face being dark. I haven't figured out my nighttime meeting lighting configuration yet. So it looks a little demonic. So just to take a brief side tour to talk about the First Street Dining Commons. It's a really good question, whether we are going to continue to do that into the future and or whether we're going to continue to permit businesses to take over parking spaces in the downtown. That's something actually we are starting to talk about internally this week, about when we start talking to businesses and probably neighbors and maybe the BDA about and others about, is this something we should be looking at every summer? So it's definitely on our radar, something that we intend to think about. I think a lot of people have been we've heard comments that a lot of folks like it and they'd like to see it continue. I think first and foremost, we want to talk to the businesses and see how well it's working for them. But yeah, it's a conversation we're going to start having. And maybe tonight's not the time, but you might be a good group to provide some feedback. So maybe we can figure out a way to plug you into that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in real quick. I would love to hear more about what you guys learn from business owners and from whoever else that you're able to gather feedback on from this project, because it's like it's something that I think would never have happened if it wasn't for, I mean, maybe not never, but like if not for this scenario that we're in right now. And I think that it's a fantastic opportunity to learn. And I think, if you were to present the idea of shutting down all these parking spaces and even a street, I think the public in normal times might react negatively to that, to the idea of losing those things. But then when it's actually in practice, you can see how it works. So I'm fascinated to learn what the response is that you get from business owners and from community members. And yeah, it's just a really interesting time to be able to do this kind of case study. That, not to say that, you know, obviously if I could do it over, you don't want any of this happening, but one slight positive is being able to experiment with things like this. So should be interesting.
Yeah, agreed. I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say about it too. All right, Jean, should we move on to the next?
Looks like Andy may have a question. Sorry, sir.
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, quick question on the map. And I'm getting new contacts this next week. I'm struggling to read the map, but is there any reason like you wouldn't take it all the way down to wrap around 5th, around City Park, being kind of the end point of that? It looks like it ends on 4th now. Am I right?
You know, Andy, we have had that conversation. So hold that thought. Maybe it might change. This is a lovely graphic from our long range planning group, but I have had that same, which is the right street question. So we might get there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's great. I think it's a super cool project though. I just want to say, yeah, I think the core challenge is going to be moving people across, as you probably already know, Farmington, you know, past Broadway across Canyon. My mom was visiting from the coast this weekend, and we walked from my house in Bose over through Old Town. We're walking up Watson and checked out the plant shop in Farmington, which I have to say, Farmington, you know, has a very, very nice streetscape, especially in comparison to Canyon with the boulevards and the landscaping and all that. But and it's getting better where you have newer development. You have nice wider sidewalks like the West Line and so forth. But then in front of those older buildings, they're just narrow sidewalks. And I know, I think the speed limit in there is 30, and you feel like traffic's buzzing by at 40 to 45 miles an hour. So it's an intimidating crossing to get to go there. But we persevered and made our way up to the food carts, had a very nice time. So anyway.
Fabulous. That's great. Okay, anyone else? Okay, hearing no one. Let me get caught back up and we'll go to Sara. Okay, take it away.
Great, thank you. And Jean's gonna be she's gonna continue to be the slide master here. All right, well, I'm gonna tell you how we're going to do this work, and then we'll talk about where you all fit into the grand scheme of things. Right now, we have completed the left-hand, this is a graphic of the various steps that'll take us from concept idea to construction. And we don't have a timeline, by the way, for how long it'll take us to get through construction. We're, as we see here, we're just right here. So we've done our project scoping, meaning we've put together scope of work, which I'll share in a minute. And we're going to move into the planning phase. What's going to come out of that is a concept plan. Once the concept plan is done, then we start looking around for, say, money. Because once we start, we'll have some preliminary cost estimates done as part of this concept plan, but we really, we may move into project development and preliminary design, but we tend to wait till we're pretty far along on knowing what our funding situation is. So we've got a timeline. Those last three tasks tend to move together. So anyway, so we're early on in this process. We've got more steps to do. We don't know quite how long that might take, how much it might cost, but after we get done with our concept plan, we'll have a much better idea of how much it's going to cost, and that will then lead us into having a better idea also of schedule. Oh, there went my phone. Okay, Jean, please. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just buzz through this project scope pretty quickly. The first thing we're going to do once we get our consultant team on board is finalize our work plan and our schedule. But really the most important part of this task is how we engage the community, because this is where we start to put together our community engagement plan. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the community engagement plan a little bit later, because I want to focus some time on it. But the community engagement plan is a really important foundational piece that we need to do early. And it's a plan that can morph and change as we move through this process. It's not necessarily going to be a static plan, particularly since we're going to be in parallel with the downtown equity strategy. And we want these two projects to inform each other. And then we'll start with a project kickoff. So to answer Rebecca's question a little bit more, well, in addition to what Jean responded, how Jean responded, we want to take a step back and think about what are going to influence the options that we put together. It's very likely that the options that Jean showed earlier in the slideshow are going to remain options on the table. But we want to step back, as Jean said, and really focus on what is it that we're going to use to influence our creation, the creation of our options, as well as what's going to help us determine our decision-making criteria. What are we going to judge all these options against? So this inventory and analysis phase, where we look at plans and policies, we do a lot of analysis of existing conditions, and we develop opportunities and constraints. And I say we do this. This phase is largely a phase that our consultants do before we take this out to the public. This is going to be an important foundational piece for the next part, the next phase, which is creating the vision, the goals, and objectives. This is where we really get into a lot of heavy public engagement. We ask the community, what are your needs? What are your priorities? Not only for the loop, but for downtown, and how does the loop serve those needs and priorities? So on the one hand, we're very focused on the loop itself, both in terms of a placemaking mechanism as well as a way to take people from here to there. But, you know, as we've talked about before, it's really a next step in making our downtown the downtown that we are dreaming it to be. So we'll ask the community for its needs and priorities, and then from that we will develop vision, goals, and objectives and share that with the community, get feedback on that, so that by the time, so that our consultant team has a good grasp of what's important to the community. They can marry it with the analysis and the existing conditions work that they've done, and develop what we're calling our design alternatives. You saw two that were designed by a consultant team as part of the development downtown design project. We don't know how many of these options we're going to develop, but we'll probably develop quite a lot of them. And then we will take them out to folks like you, others in the community, for what we call design refinement. We start picking them apart. What works, what doesn't, what do we like, what do we not like? Maybe some come off the table, maybe some morph. With the idea that through it's an iterative process, we get to what we call a preferred alternative. And this is not going to be an easy process, because we don't have wide enough right-of-way, we don't have wide enough streets to create a street that's going to meet everybody's vision. It may not, we don't have enough right-of-way to have as wide as sidewalks as some people might want, or to have as large a protected bike lane as some people want, or enough to have enough parking or enough travel lanes. You know, we're gonna engage a lot of people who are gonna have a lot of opinions. So getting to this preferred alternative is going to be, it's not going to be easy, but again, that's why when we develop our vision, goals, and objectives, we're gonna check these options against those goals and objectives and see which ones meet the goals and objectives, or the most meet goals and objectives, and which ones don't. Then once we move through that, we go into plan adoption, and we get a final plan adoption through the city council, and we have a final plan. Jean, next slide. So we're gonna step back for a minute and talk about community engagement. If you look at these two slides, this is a perfect example of some of the challenges that we have today, in that this is how we have often done projects like this. We do community walks, we do open houses, we get people together and do charrettes and do brainstorming. We get people together to work together, to communicate together in person. That's obviously not going to happen, at least in the near future. So we need to come up with new tools, new virtual tools. And the good news is that all of, we're not the only community facing this. So there are a lot of, I don't want to say best practices because I don't think they've stood the test of time, but there's a lot out there. And our consulting team that we select will help us to figure out how we're going to reach communities that we normally have reached via face-to-face. The other opportunity we have is an equity focus. How are we really going to make this process very inclusive? How are we going to work with communities we may not have worked with very much in the past, or who have maybe not been very vocal in the past? How do we ensure that they're involved? And then how do we ensure that our outcome, as we were talking about with the downtown equity strategy, how do we make sure that our outcome is also equitable? So this is sort of an exciting new time for public engagement, because we just have to really rethink how we do our work. So that's a good challenge to have. One other thing, we will have a stakeholder advisory committee. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. We'll be developing that probably in September. So stay tuned. We'll know a lot more about how we're going to do our community outreach as we move forward. Jean? Okay, some basics. Budget, $150,000 from Bureau. Upcoming key dates, we are in the midst of selecting our consultant team. Dan and I are on a team that consists of 6 folks, most of whom are internal, but we also have an external person, a board member, and downtown BDA board member and downtown business owner who's also participating in the selection of the consultant team. We will get them on board in September, taking a contract to Bureau for approval, and then we'll start the project off in October. And the project is expected to take 12 to 18 months to develop between inception and council adoption. Next slide, please. URAC role. So there are some critical voices in this process, and I would say the URAC is one of them. The city, Beaverton is blessed with some very active advisory committees, many of whom have an interest and a relevance to the work that we do here on the Loop. So we expect to be touching all of you advisory committees and inviting you to be part of the process. We know that we will be coming to you with updates at key milestones, and we know that we will be inviting you to participate in our engagement activities. At this point, we just don't know what those activities are yet, and we don't quite know what the schedule is. But as soon as we have that information, that is definitely something that we can share with you and let you know how the process is unfolding once we've nailed down our work plan and schedule. So with that, I think, thank you for your time. Do you have any questions about process, about the way we're doing things, or suggestions in the way we do things as we consider our final work plan and our developing our engagement plan? And Tyler, you're gonna have to help look for hands because I can't see everybody.
Well, Sarah, can we stop sharing your screen now?
Yeah.
It's my screen actually here.
Thank you.
The Jean screen.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions or comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Oh, come on, you're not that quiet. I know you much better than that.
I will say it was very helpful to hear your thoughts and suggestions as part of the downtown equity strategy, and that's in part why we came after that, because we did want to hear how you responded to that. And it is interesting, we're starting a process that's going to be in parallel with the downtown equity strategy, but it's a great opportunity for us to both use this loop process as a testing ground, if you will, as well as using the equity process to inform our community engagement in the loop. So I think we're expecting, Dan and Jean and I are expecting that as we move through this process, this loop design process, you know, we may be changing course, we may be changing the way we interact with folks depending on what we're hearing and seeing come out of the downtown equity strategy. So it's in some respects, it's a great time to be, you know, for these projects to inform each other.
Any questions, everyone? Guess not. You guys nailed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for your time, and we'll be back. You know, I think about the loop in the context of all of the other investments that the city has made or is in the process of making in our downtown. And this is one of the first really big infrastructure projects to complement all of the work that URA has been doing on the private side. So it's pretty exciting to see this happen. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jean. Nathan, did you have a final?
Thank you so very much.
Nathan, you didn't have a comment?
I was going to say thank you very much for the presentation. I'm actually really excited to see how this is going to start unfolding, especially off of Watson Avenue. Seeing those 3 different diagrams in the early phase of this planning phase, it's going to be really exciting to see which one is chosen and how it begins to roll out. So thank you very much for that presentation. I think this is going to be a fantastic product when it's all said and done. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nathan.
Jane, Sarah, Dan, thank you very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. And Dan, you can go hang out with your wife and your baby. And we'll expect you to carry all this water from here on out. How's that? All right. Jen, back to you.
I think it's back to you.
I know. I was trying to get prepared.
Update announcement.
Okay, I do have a few things before we get into double check our time. We got, okay, perfect. We have no meeting, as you know, in September because of Labor Day. And that means October will be our next meeting, which means boards and commissions recruitment process will be happening between now and then. And you'll probably, those who might be up for their 3-year allotment, if you are interested in continuing with the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, or possibly the Budget Committee, or for some of you planning commissioners, or whoever else might be out there. I do know that from URAC, the term ends for Dom, Jennifer, Eric, and Ann. And for the Budget Committee, Dom and Jennifer. So if you are all still interested, which I hope you are, we try to make this as fun as possible, you'll need to reapply through the Boards Commission's webpage. I believe you can do that at any point, and it should be available right now to do that. So heads up there. To add to that, on July 28th, the Bureau Board met, and one of the discussion items that we had was the city charter change. And as you all are aware, the city charter was actually completely redone. It's not an amendment, is what I was told from our city attorney, but it is a whole new city charter. With that, there is kind of a whole new government, and we've talked about this briefly, and you're probably been following it, but there will be a city manager that comes on board January 1st. The council has decided that city manager will be an interim city manager while they do a national search for a long-standing city manager, a permanent city manager. And I think that they're probably thinking about 6 months or so for an interim, and that way that there's at least some transition and not just here, go. And so that's exciting to see how that's all going to work in the coming months. So with that, there's also a new city councilor. So the mayor will that position will then be a voting member of council. Currently, the mayor is not a voting member of council. And so with the mayor being a 6th person for council, that gets you at an even number for voting purposes. And they decided to have an additional city councilor. So we'll have an additional Bureau Board member now. And that makes us at 10 members. And again, now we're into a even number situation. So we went to Bureau Board this past week and talked about it and said, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to remove one of the 3 appointees, who's Roy, Sheila, and Doug Menke from THPRD, former URAC members? Or do you want to add an appointee, or do you want to just go with the 10? And they decided to go with an additional appointee. And so we'll have 11 Bureau Board members beginning in January. So there's going to be an additional Bureau Board member that we'll be recruiting for. And so if you're interested in that, that will be another application that will be available. Then, for those who are on the Bureau Budget Committee, you already know there's 18 members on the Bureau Budget Committee because we have the number of Bureau Board members, and then we double that to get to 18. And now that we have 11 Bureau Board members, we'll have 22 Budget Committees. So we will be recruiting for an additional 2 Budget Committee members. So there's lots of positions available. So if you're interested in any of those, or in changing things up, or know anybody that would be great members of Urban Renewal, and keeping in mind too that we're looking at the diversity, equity, inclusion lens as well. And send them my way. We can talk, or just send them to the applications and get those in. I believe the deadline is end of September. I did not look that up, so don't quote me, but I believe it's end of September for applications. Questions on that? Yeah, Eric.
Not a question. I just wanted to piggyback on that discussion for a second. So I think, as most of you know, I'm also on the BCCI, and I've been tasked with informing everybody that the voters forum for the November election, which is going to have the runoff for mayor, it's going to have the additional city council seat, and I think the Washington County Commissioner, that's going to be October 14th at 7 o'clock. So they still haven't decided yet if it's going to be all remote or some combination. So that'll be determined as we get closer, but mark that on your calendars.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, any other questions on that topic? Okay. Let's see, looking at my notes here. There is and I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, you know what? I think I may have lost it never mind. I lost it as I was trying to pull up other things tonight. There is a housing options project. And to be honest, I didn't know a lot about this. Maybe our planning commissioners knew something on it. And I was planning on sharing the screen, so I don't have notes. But if you're interested, why don't you take a look at the city's website, probably do the search Housing Options Project. And they have a survey on there. And from my understanding, basically is trying to engage on, what is important to you for the types of housing and the housing products. Oh, Chase, of course you're at it. There we go. Good job, man. So as you can see there's an online survey. They kind of are showing different types of housing, duplexes and cottage style housing, townhouses. Rob Zeller's associate planner in our planning department is setting that up, and they've done some original kind of information, but there are some land use changes that has happened from the state perspective. And so I just encourage you to maybe take a look at that. It seems like yeah, this group would be perfect for having the opportunity to take a look at that survey. Jen or Scott, do you know anything about it that you can add to it? Okay.
I haven't seen anything. Jen, have you?
I think we got a mention about it early on, but we haven't seen any updates.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, take a look.
Tyler, so they presented on this to our BCCI meeting last week, actually. So
well, Eric, tell us more.
Yeah, so there were some changes in the state zoning laws, and from the city's perspective, they're not 100% certain what all this is going to mean. But what it sounds like at this point, anybody anywhere in the city is going to be able to build a duplex in anything that's zoned residential, whereas most cases that might be single family at this point. So they're going to be able to build duplexes anywhere. They're determining other things like triplexes, townhouses, cottage clusters. There's not a ton of clarity yet, but the duplexes they're sure on, and I think the city's also trying to get an understanding of what people would like to see, what people are interested in, and help them guide how they, I guess, explain and implement the rule. But again, still waiting for more clarity from the state.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. Thanks, Eric. That was helpful. Any questions? Okay, and I'm going to move on to the Bureau updates, and we will send this out to you after. We'll probably do it tomorrow. We'll send the Bureau area updates to you. We'll send. There's the PowerPoint presentations from tonight, and there was one other thing I was going to send, so I'll have to think about what that other thing was. But
I think it's Tyler, I think it's the handout that Dan wanted to include.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kels. So you'll get that from us tomorrow. As far as updates go, I'm cruising through. Nothing new kind of on the general construction side of things. That Bureau's kind of got the pulse at, the PRCA, the garage, Marianne, which we talked about before, Hyatt House. I'll continue on. The BC2 site, which is the properties that Bureau purchased on Beaver Dam. And so Janine continues to work with the two developers there, figuring out all the things that they're going to be doing. Of course, COVID is kind of making it a little bit challenging of understanding all the different pieces and how they're moving forward. But there's an E&A that will be extended on the Beaver Dam West site. And so they're continuing to work with both developers, and we should be expecting kind of get an update here as we go into the fall. As I move on, I'm struggling. Everything is popped up on me. There we go. So Sara King, who presented, she had the open air Beaverton Recovery Pilot Program to go along with the things that were happening downtown and the small businesses assistance, that emergency business assistance program that the city was working on. It sounds like the city will have about $2.5 million of small business assistance through the Washington County and state here. That will be distributed citywide, not just downtown. That's citywide opportunities. That may not be in your update, but I did want to make sure you heard that. The COVID housing program response, there's a lot of information there. Take a look at that on the updates. Chase, anything else that call out besides the Downtown Design Project and the Planning Commission and City Council had a work session? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And I think that they will have another draft here coming to the Planning Commission in August.
Yeah, just a small thing to note that not so small if it passes, but there will be a bond measure going forward to the Metro Council just passed for the Get Moving 2020. So to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any questions? Now, can I turn it over to you, Jen?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
We have one agenda item left. The approval of the July 6th, 2020 meeting minutes. So we need a motion.
I move to approve the July 2020 meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, Eric moved and Nathan seconded. All those in favor say aye. Or wave.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? I'm seeing no waving hands. Okay, motion passes unanimously. So with that, we can adjourn at 8:33 p.m.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone.
See you in October.
Yeah, have a good couple months here, okay?
Happy August, everyone.
Yeah.
Aw.
And
I'll
happy
see you all soon.
September.
Take care.
The future.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your extra day next month.
Nathan's going to miss us.
Mhm.
Good job, Tyler.
No, you guys, good job for saving. My computer is just like in and out and it's driving me crazy.
Wow, well, you really did a good job of handling that.
Is it Scott that we still have on, and Kelly, you still recording?
Oh, let me turn off that recording. Stop recording.